You've been playing the game for a while, or maybe you just started out. Either way, you can't seem to climb the ranks as quickly as you hoped. So let's change that today. What's going on, ProGuides fam? I'm Boggs, and today we'll be talking about how to climb each and every rank, so that you can get unstuck and continue to climb to where you belong. When trying to climb a rank, it can be really hard to know what to focus on, so here we'll be giving you clear steps that'll guarantee you to rank up no matter where you are or what your goal is. Sound fair enough? Let's jump in. The first tip for all of you silver players out there is to get really familiar with all of the maps, smokes, and angles. If you're in the silver ranks, odds are you still have a lot to learn, and that's okay. One of the first things you should focus on is learning one or a few of the maps in the pool and getting familiar with all of the important elements. You need to make sure you get a good feel for timings, learn common grenades, and also get familiar with all the different angles people like to play, as well as how to pre-aim them. I'm sure at this stage you're already familiar with crosshair placement, unless you're a very new player, in which case, welcome. But even if you understand the concept of crosshair placement, you still need to be able to use it effectively. A good way of learning most angles, which can be done with ease across all the maps, is running the YPRAC pre-fire mode. This is a good way of making sure you at least are aware of most angles and get a general feel for how to pre-aim them as well. If you know the angles, you're ready to move on to the next stage, and that's learning the nades. Grenades and nade lineups are crucial in Counter-Strike, and knowing a handful of helpful ones on each map will already do a whole lot for you. Of course, the pros have tons and tons of lineups that they study and practice on a regular basis, but even knowing just 5 accomplishes infinitely more than knowing 0. The hardest part about learning maps, though, at least for newer players, is one of the most important, and that's getting to know the timings and contact points. You need to know how long it takes to rotate from A to B, how fast you can get from your spawn to their site, how fast a rotation through mid is, and so much more. Then of course you also need to know what happens if both you and your opponent rush from spawn, how long does it take for you to meet, and where will your meeting be. If you can top off that basic knowledge with also some extra map specific things such as cool plays, boosts, and one-ways, you should really be set to find your way into Gold Nova. Now I know we might be getting angry comments for saying that, because there's a lot of people that have been playing the game for a very long time, yet still can't find their way out of silver. But the truth is, getting out of silver is easy and anyone can do it. If you're really stuck in silver and simply can't manage to climb, the reason for that is pretty straightforward. You have some very deep-rooted bad habits that are simply holding you down massively. If your aim is fine, you know all the maps, and you've been playing the game for a while, there is no reason that you should be stuck in silver. All you have to do is get with a coach and have them review your gameplay and pick out those bad habits of yours. That way, you'll be able to fix them easily and be at your desired rank in no time. But of course, our coaches on ProGuides.com will be able to help you out even if you're a different skill level as well, no matter if you're pushing for Legendary Eagle or even Face It level 10. Anyway, let's move on to the gold ranks. So you're a gold player. What you have to do is pretty simple. Continue grinding the game, but specifically focus on developing your mechanics. First, get yourself a solid warm-up schedule so that you feel ready whenever you hop into a game. Being prepared when you hop into ranked and feeling ready is very important. There are players like Flusha or Ziwu that don't do any type of warm-up and can still perform, but then you have people on the other end of the spectrum that can't perform at all without it. So find a warm-up method that makes you feel comfortable and confident, and complete it before you hop into a game. Just to give you some idea of what would suffice, think about doing some aimbots, FFA deathmatch, or even aim lab. Of course, the most important part of warm-up is what makes you feel ready. So if the above 3 mentioned aren't it, instead you prefer some surf or some other form of warm-up, then no one should stop you from doing that instead. Working on your mechanics is more than just warming up though. Warming up is just to get you ready for your gaming sesh, and then you have to do your aim and movement practice. Practicing your aim and movement in isolation is the fastest way to improve them. Of course, you can also just play CSGO, lol. Don't get me wrong, we'll work over time, but if you want to work smarter and not harder, setting up an efficient practice regimen is your way to go. A good aim routine can consist of some bot practice together with some FFA deathmatch to practice against real players. And if you want to really focus on your aim solely rather than general gunplay, you could also spend some time on aim lab working on different scenarios. Basically, pretty similar to your warm-up, but the key difference here is that you'll be doing each part for a lot longer, since you're not just getting a feel for the game and aiming, rather you're practicing it. For movement, we'd recommend going for a healthy mix of KZ maps, surf, and some realistic jumps that you'll find in real maps, which can be practiced on the jump training map by Whiskia. What can really help here is also watching some clips of pros doing it, both so that you can have a better idea of what it should look like, as well as to help set goals. It's easy to feel like your aim and movement are at a level that's already good enough, but truth be told, if you're stuck in Gold Nova or below, there's bound to be some room for improvement. Even as a Face It level 10 player, it's not all that uncommon to get killed, and you can't help feel like I might want to practice a bit more. Even though there's nothing wrong with that, at least for me, losing is never fun, and if you want to become the best CSGO player you could possibly be, the sooner you realize that, the better. It's often said that as long as you have good aim mechanics, you can easily carry yourself to the higher ranks of matchmaking, and that's simply very true. So if you're truly convinced that your aim is on par with that of the pros, well, sorry, but perhaps you should reconsider, at least if you want to rank up. Before we move on though, let's quickly go over our question of the day. Today's question being, what rank are you currently in? It's always interesting to see what ranks you guys are currently climbing, so make sure to comment yours down below. Whether that's Face It, ESCA, or matchmaking, I'll be sure to read them all either way. Moving on to the Master Guardian ranks. You need to work on perfecting your peaks and taking favorable fights. Even in some of the ranks above these, you can still occasionally see people peeking improperly or just not being completely clean with them, and that's a big deal. CSGO is a game that has peeker's advantage, but that's only the case if your peaks are fast and clean. If you often shift walk into angles, overstep, or mess up your crosshair placement, your advantage is gone, and it goes to your opponent instead. As you climb the ranks and people become more and more in tune with the game, you need to make sure you are too, and your peaks are clean. Sure, in Master Guardian you can probably get away with some of these mistakes, but you want to climb, right? So you need to be at a higher level than everyone else. The best way to practice peeking with feedback is to simply hit up one of your friends and play consecutive 1 versus 1s against them. You'll both be able to learn from your mistakes, and if your friend sees the other doing something wrong, then you can simply fix that right away. You don't just need to learn how to peek though, you also need to learn what angles you should and should not be peeking in the form of favorable angles. Once you're able to perfect your peek and learn to properly start peeking angles, it should also quickly become apparent which angles are and aren't right to peek even when doing it properly. If you find an angle that's really difficult to peek for whatever reason, keep that in mind the next time you want to peek it and use some utility instead. And of course, if you're on the CT side, consider playing there yourself. If you're able to perfect those two things, you'll quickly find yourself in the Eagle ranks, and from there, a whole new journey begins. If you're here, you'll most likely be high enough in the ladder that your teammates become at least somewhat reliable, meaning you can start playing together a lot more effectively. This is where you'll need to learn the basics of good team play. Focus on learning how to effectively trade, start coordinating pushes, and just in general, learn to play around your teammates. If you notice your teammate is fulfilling one part in a setup that could use two, be a good mate and fill that second part. If you see your teammate swinging an angle, try to help them and be ready to trade. And if one of your teammates calls to hit a side together, consider what part you should fulfill and do it. Not to say that if you're below the Eagle ranks, you should discard team play entirely, because, well, of course not. But you shouldn't rely on it as it won't take you far. If you're the type of player to blame teammates constantly, perhaps you are the problem, and you can function on your own even without a great team to play around you. In Legendary Eagle and above though, it is reasonable to expect a bit more of your teammates, and a reaction to that should be to attempt to play together with them more. Of course, you shouldn't expect coordination like that of a practiced professional team, but you should do the absolute basics. Trade wherever possible, keep an eye on what your mates want to do to help them, and if coordinated play is what's required, ask your team for help. Supreme is one of those ranks that are a bit odd. Global and Supreme are surprisingly similar, and the difference between the average players within them is little to none. If you're in Supreme right now, all you have to do is keep grinding while trying your best to work on your weaknesses. If you were able to get this far, you most likely already understand at least the basics of Counter-Strike and are able to apply them reasonably. That means that more likely than not, you can at least find one or a few of your weak points and work on them. Of course, doing that problem solving together with a coach will always be more effective than just on your own, especially if you have aspirations to reach Face It level 10 after Global. But as long as you don't mind spending more time watching back demos on your own and fixing weaknesses, Global should be well within your reach. Now, for all of the Global players out there, this is where you either park the bus and retire in the highest rank of matchmaking, or decide to take it a step further and push for Face It level 10, or even perhaps Pro. I really do hope you pick one of the two latter, as that's where real Counter-Strike starts. But if you do, you're going to start a whole new adventure, and that's undoubtedly going to be a lot more difficult than the previous. Our best advice here would honestly be to just go straight to a high ELO level 10 or semi-pro coach and start learning about some of the more advanced CSGO topics right away. But if you want to, you could also make that climb on your own. Either way, we hope you enjoyed today's video and hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Be sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to visit our website at ProGuides.com. We've got some of the best coaches and even pro courses, which will surely help you out on your climb of the ranked ladder. Best of luck in your games, everyone, and until next time, bye-bye.